Askimo TV. We're talking today to Adele Theron. Adele is the founder of the organization The Naked Divorce. She helps people dealing with the trauma of going through divorce. Hi Adele, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Wonderful. Adele, today we're going to be having a discussion about divorce and in particular about parenting. So let's begin with, what advice do you have for parents who are going through a divorce?
Number one is make sure that you sort yourself out first. In the same way that if an airplane starts going down and the cabin depressurizes and oxygen masks jump out from the ceiling, trauma, i.e. the plane crash, same way they'll say, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help everyone around you, otherwise you're going to pass out and not be able to help anybody. Same story when it comes to a divorce and being a parent. You must sort yourself out first, or you're not really in a place to help your children. And often what parents do is they focus on the routine of parenting. Oh, okay, I must feed them, I must clothe them, I must whatever. And they think that is putting their children first. But your children can sense so quickly how you're doing as a parent. So if you're having an emotional complete nightmare, that's what they're sensing, not the fact that you did prepare a meal for them. So you really got to sort yourself out emotionally so that you can help your children grieve and adapt to the change. They can't grieve and adapt to the change if they sense that you're grieving as well. They'll be strong for you, and they'll pretend that everything's okay and they're okay with it. They're not okay. Children are never okay with divorce. And many of the children that we've worked with will say that, particularly if they've lost a parent, and they have a bereavement with parenting, that the divorce was worse than when one of their parents died. So put yourself first. Next thing is, do not use your children to get back at your ex. Do not use your children as a communication mechanism or as a spy to try and find out what's going on with your ex. Don't ask them lots of questions about what, daddy or mommy are getting up to. Do not use your children as a short-term emotion avoidance tactic, meaning, the fascination with their lives and what it is that they're doing is a way of you to avoid dealing with your emotional trauma from your divorce. Taking Johnny to soccer practice is more important than me actually processing and dealing with my emotions. Prioritize healing from your divorce so that you can help them actually adapt to the change.
What should we know about the children's needs whilst going through a divorce?
I think the number one thing is children will blame themselves. It's that you can't even avoid it. Even if they tell you that they won't, they'll think, mommy and daddy were just fine before I came along. Now that I'm here, they seem to be fighting and arguing. They must be fighting and arguing because I'm here. If I was not here, and it extrapolates, so on and so forth. So parents need to be keenly aware that no matter what you do, they will blame themselves. So you have to reassure them, even if they're not saying those words. This is not your fault. This was going to break down no matter what. This is really just about me and dad, that kind of stuff. The next thing is they're going to feel rejected and abandoned, no matter what you do. So you have to be ultra vigilant and really focused on ensuring that you, in words, reassure them, but also back it up with action. That you tell them things and you also follow through with the action that demonstrates that. They will always side with the weaker party. So if you spend a lot of time talking about how horrible your ex is, they're going to end up hating you. They also, if they see you showing compassion or understanding for your ex, their loyalty to you will be unending, because they will know that they can see through things. Even if you don't, he's a good for nothing, he left me with that tramp, you go on these horrible things. They're going to end up thinking you're a victim, and you're going to train them that a woman is a weaker party, as an example. They will grow up faster. So sadly, particularly if children are very young, and the parents go through a divorce, they will leap in, responsibility stages because they'll want to suddenly be a parent to you going through the trauma. This is why it's so important that you sort yourself out so that they don't have to parent you through the trauma. And with that growing up quickly, they might grow up, but they've skipped steps. So I would really recommend that the children get some counseling or some therapy so that they can work through their own acceptance of the situation and, their own feelings about what's happened. They'll also have a distorted view of relationships and might decide, I'm never getting married or I'm never doing this because their paradigm of relationships has been destroyed. And it's up to you as a parent to restore that paradigm to the way that it should be. And you can only restore that if you've sorted yourself out in your own view and paradigm of relationships.
What would you say are some of the most, biggest post-parenting or post-divorce mistakes that parents make?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is they're not partners with the other parent. The best divorces I've seen is when you've actually, particularly when you are still, when you are parents, is you've got to actually be in partnership with the other parent. You don't need to be great buddies with the other person, but you need to have a clear parenting plan and have a consistency between the two parents. If there's a competition going on about who's got the biggest presents or who's spending the most time and who's the worst person, this is dangerous territory when it comes to mistakes made after a divorce. The next thing is not healing and not prioritizing your healing, because the children will end up feeling sorry for the weaker party. They'll end up parenting the weaker party, which forces them to grow up way before their time and skip emotional stages, which are critical to their development. So definitely, I'd say you've got to prioritize that. I think that's the one thing that comes through in this interview is prioritize yourself. Not managing schedules and letting children down. Children are very sensitive to, okay, dad's coming to pick you up after school, and then he doesn't come and pick you up. Massive impact. So you've got to be consistent. You've got to have straight communication and back it up with and follow through with clear action. Routines need to be respected as well with children. And just as much as when anybody goes through a trauma that they need a grounded routine, a children's routine is critical. And being selfish, focusing on yourself, your need to get over things, your pain, your issues, versus actually helping your children come to terms with the trauma. And just focusing on the mundane checklist of parenting, like, okay, have they been fed, have they been washed, right, my job is done. No. Your job as a parent is also to produce viable adults and help them cope with the trauma themselves.
And just to finally end off quickly, what are some post-divorce parenting strategies or tips on how to co-parent effectively for the sake of the children?
I think what I really recommend is, even if you have a fairly amicable situation with your ex, is get yourself literally one day with a mediator is just brilliant, because the mediator will also develop some ground rules and some communication techniques for handling of disputes that might come up in the future. So get yourself a day with a mediator and run through everything there is to do about parenting. Develop a parenting plan, a routine for how we're going to see each other, how we're going to behave on birthdays, who's going to have the kids, well, how are we going to deal with holidays, how are we going to deal with if a dispute arises, you were going to pick them up from school but you didn't. So use the mediator to help anticipate scenarios that might come up in the future, and when you have a plan for how you're going to deal with that, you've got ground rules for how you're going to deal with it, it just makes the dealing of it when it comes up brilliant and really effortless. So having plans and strategies in place ahead of time is a really good tip for that. The other thing is having a clear schedule and reliable calling mechanism. So, right, you're always going to call on Mondays and Wednesdays at this time, and this is how we're going to deal with that. And having a working relationship and partnership is is also critical to having those schedules. You know, so if there's a breakdown, right, I can't pick up because we're late for work, then there's an ease because you've had the mediation on how to deal with those scenarios when they pop up. And again, make sure that you both heal. You know, if one of you is bitter, it just destroys that kind of harmony with the parenting.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
You're welcome.